Hey y'all, it's me, Kevvie. So we've come to the end of the Christie's Missing Readathon, and I have a whole bunch of Christies to tell you about, including a few that I read before the Readathon. The first one I read was Parker Pyne Investigates. This is a collection of short stories about the titular Parker Pyne, whose business is to help those who are unhappy. I was put off at first because, despite the title, the first half of the collection features no investigations. Sure, there's plotting and scheming, but we were explicitly promised by the title that there would be investigations. So it was weird that there weren't any for a very large chunk. Those stories weren't bad by any means, they just weren't what was advertised. I almost feel like these could have worked better as, Westmacott stories, if she had done such a thing. In the second half, when Parker Pyne begins to travel, that's when we finally get into proper investigations, several of which were really good. But yeah, there wasn't much mystery in this collection, and I didn't really care for that. Not bad, just not what I was looking for. One positive thing about this collection is that it is the first appearance of recurring character Ariadne Oliver. Oliver is one of my favorite Christie slews, and she is essentially an author's stand-in. She is Christie herself. An author who writes mystery novels about a foreign detective, except in Ariadne's case he's a Finn, getting on in years, short and stout, and loves to eat apples. Oliver is always amusing because she believes the police are terrible and incompetent because they are all men. If women were in charge, crimes would be solved much more quickly because of women's intuition. I've read a handful of books with Ariadne before, and it was really fun to finally read her debut. Next I read Mrs. McGinty's Dead, a Poirot novel. This was a gift from Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot. Thank you, Sandy. A woman named Mrs. McGinty is murdered, and everyone assumes the killer must be her lodger. But of course, things aren't as they seem, and Poirot needs to come in to uncover the truth. This book features another appearance from Ariadne Oliver. She's working with someone connected to the case to have one of her novels adapted into a play. And of course she chums it up with Poirot and has to explain to him that she knows who did it because of her excellent intuition. So you know Christie loves to take nursery rhymes and children's songs and turn them into something sinister. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I had no idea Mrs. McGinty's Dead was such a game. Apparently the first person says, Mrs. McGinty's dead. The next person says, well, how did she die? Then the first gives a silly response that rhymes with die. I thought the incorporation of the game was weird, and it would have been better had she not tried to work it directly into the story. I really liked this one though. I was convinced I knew who did it, but I was totally deceived. Great job to Christie for accomplishing that. Then I read Sad Cypress, which was a gift from Lynette Sozette. Thanks, Lynette. Sad Cypress is another Poirot novel, an example of a retrospective case. This one doesn't go as far back as Five Little Pigs, but by the time the book begins, the murder has been committed and the suspect tried and found guilty. The head detective, however, doesn't believe that the woman they've sentenced is capable of committing murder and doesn't want to see her wrongfully hanged. So he enlists Poirot to go over the evidence and clear things up once and for all. I really liked this one too. I loved the way the killer had so perfectly set up this crime to incriminate their scapegoat and leave them apparently blameless. While I had some suspicions of who it was, the actual twist was so full of so many delightful surprises. This was a really well-crafted mystery. Following that, I read another gift from Lynette. Thank you, Lynette. Evil Under the Sun. I was excited to read this one because of its film adaptation. I've been waiting to watch that until I actually read the book. Evil Under the Sun is one of many Poirot mysteries that's set while he is on vacation. This time he's at a lovely little hotel on a tiny little island. I love the leisurely pace of this novel. Poirot is there right from the beginning, and 30 pages in, he hasn't even moved from his chair. The story does pick up though, and ooh, this book's murder is a doozy. Like Mrs. Boynton in Appointment with Death, this is a case where you're really looking forward to this victim's death. And when it finally comes, it's so satisfying. Again, the concept of how this crime was committed is just brilliant. And all the clues are right there, but without the thread connecting them, they just seem to be completely random. Also, Poirot appeared to have some chemistry with another guest at the hotel. And I loved the idea of Poirot having just a smidgen of romance for himself for once. Normally, it's all the people around him hooking up, so it was sweet to see him having a couple of moments. Evil Under the Sun also had some meta storytelling elements to it. When someone asks Poirot who he thinks did it, he responds, "I reserve explanation for the last chapter." That was cute, but I don't think I'm too fond of meta-ness. At least there wasn't too much of it there. But yeah, I like this one a lot. Alright, now we've gotten to the Christies that I read for the Christie's Missing Readathon. For the first prompt, to read any Agatha Christie, I read the Poirot novel Third Girl. Third Girl is about a girl who says to Poirot, "I think I might have committed a murder," and immediately afterwards goes missing. So it's up to Poirot to track her down and uncover whether or not this girl really killed someone. The title refers to the idea of advertising for a roommate. Two women share a flat and then place an ad looking for third girl. There's a theme throughout many of Christie's post-war books that I hadn't really picked up on till this one. She wrote very little about the war during the war, but just about everything after World War II is tainted by it. There's almost always a character who is a soldier or was involved in the war in some capacity. And it seems to me that while the rest of the world has moved on, Agatha Christie is still stuck in the past. The whole premise of the book is based on Christie thinking, "Hey, have you heard of this strange new concept of women sharing apartments?" At a certain point, she just became incapable of keeping up with the times. All the new developments in the 50s and 60s she frowns upon. Elderly characters lament on how different young people are. They see them all as loose and immoral, and that isn't just present in Third Girl. Now that I've picked up on it, I remember a lot of her later books have stuff like this. It's a shame that Christie was so set in her ways that she couldn't appreciate any of these modern changes, only looking upon them in disdain. One thing I loved about Third Girl was how much of a presence Ariadne Oliver had. She is in this novel as much as Poirot is, doing all of her own investigations, following her intuition while overlooking vital clues. Like I said earlier, I really love this character, and it was great seeing so much of her here in Third Girl. The book was also my first print encounter with Miss Lemon. In later Poirot novels, Miss Lemon is Poirot's secretary. Anyone who has watched the David Suchet Poirot series will know this character because for several seasons, they added her character to several stories that she wasn't originally a part of. In the books, she's only in a few novels. I really liked reading about her character. She is a perfect match for Poirot and his quirks, and I'm looking forward to reading more about her in other books. I predicted whodunit only about a quarter of the way into this mystery. I also clocked several of the twists. The only thing I was mistaken about was the accomplice. I love the solution to this whodunit. While I found it easily predictable, I thought it was still really enjoyable. For the second prompt, to read a Christie novel without Poirot or Marple, I read The Secret Adversary, starring Tommy and Tuppence. Tommy and Tuppence are a pair of young adventurers who age in real time over the course of their books. Unlike Poirot and Marple, who start out elderly and stay elderly, we get to watch the Beresfords go from young adults to middle-aged to old and gray. I'd read 2 Tommy and Tuppence books before this one, both of which are when they are older. So I was nervous going into Secret Adversary because since it's their first book, it's when they are the youngest. And I wasn't sure if I'd still like them then. I read somewhere once that if you like them when they're older, you'll find them when they're younger to be annoying. But they weren't at all. I still really enjoyed them as characters. So I initially misunderstood the opening chapter of The Secret Adversary. It begins on the Lusitania as it is sinking. A young man approaches a woman and asks, "Are you a patriot?" and then gives her important secret documents to take off the ship with her. Since women and children first was a thing, there was a greater likelihood of her getting off the ship than him. See, when I first read this chapter, I was under the impression that these two were Tommy and Tuppence. And I loved that idea. How amazing of an introduction would that be, that the two of them met while the ship was sinking, him thrusting her into the world of espionage, and then afterwards meeting up, falling in love, getting married, and going on adventures together. I would have loved that. Oh, that would have been such a good origin story. I quickly became disillusioned when we find out in the next chapter that Tommy and Tuppence are just childhood friends who occasionally still kept in touch, and then one day just decide decide to go into the adventure business together. That origin story is much less dramatic, much less romantic. So right off the bat, it put a damper on my enjoyment of this novel. One of my favorite things about this book was the introduction of the character Albert. I've only known Albert as a grown-up, as the Beresford servant/assistant. So when Tuppence approaches a little boy on the street to get help on the case, and he introduced himself as Albert, oh, it was so sweet. He was so eager to help Tuppence with her super secret spy work. I love that after the events of this novel, Christie decided that Albert would stick around as a permanent fixture in their lives. The mystery in the book was pretty good, trying to track down the woman from the Lusitania and acquire those missing papers. The twist was pretty obvious, but overall I enjoyed it. For the third prompt, to read a Christie set in bad weather, I read the Sittaford Mystery. This one was really fun. Like the Pale Horse, the Sittaford Mystery dabbles in the supernatural. During a snowstorm, a dinner party decides to play a game of turning tables, which I assume is akin to a Ouija board, a way to allegedly talk to the dead. When the table tells them that their friend is dead, one of the party immediately leaves to go check up on him, only to find he has been murdered. I really loved this mystery and its solution. I remembered who done it and how from watching an adaptation a while back, but oh, it's really clever. I enjoyed getting to look out for those clues, which clearly stood out to me since I knew what I was looking for, but they would have been so easily glossed over if I hadn't known. My one issue with this book was that it was way too meta. So many times they'd say things like, well, if this were a novel, this or this would happen. Or, in mystery books, this is who would have done it. I really did not like that. Like, you are in a novel. And to have the awareness of how such books would work, but not the awareness to know you are in such a book, oh, that was so annoying to me. Like, please stop pretending that you are somehow different from the other mystery books you're talking about. Oh, that just really got on my nerves. Like, go all in with the meta-ness or don't do it at all. At least now I know that this is a trope that doesn't really work for me. And then for the optional 6th prompt to watch an adaptation, I finally watched the Evil Under the Sun movie. Oh my gosh, this film is so camp. Why did nobody tell me this movie is so camp? Maggie Smith is incredible in this film. It is hands down my favorite role of hers. And her costumes are just to die for. Like, look at this top and blazer. I dare you to look at this and not tell me she's dressed like a drag queen. Oh, it's so fabulous. The film also wrote in a couple of new characters, my favorite one being a gay. Kipple tried to dismiss the heavy gay coding and stereotypical behavior. Maybe he's not gay, he could just be a sailor. But Maggie Smith declaring, cherchez la fruit. That really cinched it. Oh, that character brought so much life into the film. Honestly, I think this is one of those cases where the film is even better than the book. The movie was just about perfect to me, and I could watch it again and again. So here's how I would rank the Christies I read this time around. Mrs. McGinty's Dead is at the top of my list. It didn't just stump me, it completely fooled me into suspecting the wrong person. But when the reveal happened, it still made sense. Parker Pyne Investigates is at the bottom of the list, because it did not deliver what was promised, and when it did, only a couple of the mysteries really worked for me. Now here's how the books rank among all the Christies I've read. There were a lot of really good ones this time around, but only 2 just barely made their way into the top 20. There were no bad stories in this collection, Parker Pyne being more than 15 from the bottom, but there were no truly great ones either. They were mostly solid, but average. If you're curious how the rankings would equate to ratings, here's a little color-coded chart. The purple ones are excellent, the best of the best. The blue ones are all very good. They may not have given me the same thrill as purple, but I still loved them. The green ones were solid. Not my favorite, but not bad by any means. Pink were ones that I didn't really care for. For whatever reason, they just didn't work for me. Reds are the ones I actively disliked, and of course, The Clocks is in a league of its own as the worst Christie I've ever read. 4 of the 7 books I read this time were Poirot novels, and they were all good ones. Evil Under the Sun was the weakest of the 4, even though I still did enjoy it quite a lot, but I did like the movie more than the book. On the Agatha Christie subreddit, there's a spreadsheet where the subs users can rank the Poirot novels they've read, and The Clocks is in second to last place, with Black Coffee taking the bottom spot as worst novel. I'm eager to read that one so that I can hopefully like it better than The Clocks, rate it higher, and finally get The Clocks into its deserved spot of dead last. And I did not read any Miss Marple mysteries in this batch, so my Marple ranking remains unchanged. So that was the Christie's Missing Readathon. I've now read over 50 of Christie's books. Which ones did you read for the Readathon? Have you read any of these? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know which ones I should read next. I just got a whole bunch of them in a huge sale, haul vid to come later, so I don't have to wait for a feature sale to determine my reading order. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if it pleases and sparkles, I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!